Lots of bass players find it tough to get a nice, consistent, dynamic playing in their playing. But which compressor in the Helix do you use for your bass? And what do all those controls mean? Threshold, gain, limit, knee, attack. I'm Twisty, and in this video I'm going to take you through my favorite Helix compressor, the Rochester Comp, based on the Ashley CLX52 rack-mounted compressor, which was being made famous, well, I think it's famous, through Billy Sheehan's usage of it and his work with Line 6 to replicate his own personal Ashley comp. Let's take a look and see if we can make it work for you as well as it works for him. Check it out. As a bass player, one of the many challenges we have, and I've got many challenges for being a bass player, is the ability to have a consistent dynamic range regardless of what we're playing. So I want my harmonics to be heard at the same level as I'm getting my dry runs and those pops. Now, each of those is going to have a different accent or different dynamic, but I don't want each one to pop out too far either side. I don't want some of them to be too low in the mix and some of them to be really loud in the mix. Using a compressor gives me the ability to flatten things down a little bit so that I'm within a consistent range rather than dramatic changes. Now, every compressor on the market, whether it's made for bass, whether it's made for guitar, or where it's made for studio use, will be slightly different and it will call things slightly differently. But all of them include these characteristics. Some of them are just hidden from you. So we look at gain. So gain sets how hot the bass is when it hits the compressor. It's a bit like the gain volume on a mixing desk or your audio interface, or setting the input level on your Helix for your bass to come in. It does a similar thing. It sets how much or how hot the signal is as it goes into the compressor. Volume in, if you like. The threshold is the key one. That's the one that determines the level at which or volume level at which a signal will become compressed. So for example, if you set that to minus 30 decibels, then anything you play that is lower than minus 30 decibels won't be compressed. But anything that hits minus 30 or above will start getting compressed. The higher above that is, the more compressed it gets to get it down to that level. Now, the level of compression that gets applied at that threshold is based on the ratio you set. So for example, a 4:1 ratio means that for every 4 decibels above the threshold, only 1 decibel comes out. A 10:1 would mean that for every 10 decibels above, 1's coming out. And a 2:1 would mean that for every 2 decibels, 1 comes out. The lower the ratio, the more subtle the compression, and the higher the ratio means the more compressed or more aggressive the compression is, with anything from sort of 10 and above being more like a brick wall limiter. How fast the compressor engages when it hits that threshold and compresses down to the ratio level is based on the attack. So a fast attack means that the compressor will kick in quickly, and a slower attack means that it will kick in over a longer period of time. So it's more subtle. The slower the attack, or the higher the number in milliseconds that the attack is set to, means more of your basic attack from your playing will kick through before the compression starts to kick in. So if you want an instant kick in, then you have the lowest attack. And if you want to have a bit of the note playing first, then you would raise the attack to a slower number. Release then is how long it takes for the compressor to then stop compressing. So we've set the ratio, we've set the amount of compression we want to put on place, we've told it at what level we want that compression to kick in, and now we're saying, and how quickly we want the compressor to engage. Now with the release, we're saying, and how long to hold that on for. So if you're looking for very quick bass runs and riffs, then a lower number will help you to make sure that the compressor gets turned off between each note or engagement. However, if you're looking for the long sort of harmonic sustain, you'll want that to be a very slow release, the higher number. Now, as you add compression and the more compression you add, the outcome of that is a lower output volume. So when people talk about compressors, they also talk about makeup gain. So with the Rochester comp, we have a level that allows us to adjust the volume output after the compression kicks in to try and get back to unity. And we'll have a look at that again in a minute. And if you want to look at how to set your patch to unity, check out this video above and where I take you through how to set parity or unity levels across your preset. The knee allows the compressor to gradually enforce the compression as it begins. Remember, the attack tells how long before it kicks in, and the knee tells it how gradually to implement it as it's being kicked in. So a soft knee means it's going to compress harder and harder over a period, and a hard knee means it's basically going to kick in straight away, depending on at the time that the attack says, I need compression now. A hard knee will go, it's on. A soft knee will go, all right, I'll start it now and I'll finish it when I get to it. Now, the Ashley CLX 52, the actual physical device, was really well used or recognized in studios for having a very soft knee. So it brought compression in gradually. And so the Line 6 guys have looked at mimicking that soft knee approach. So even on a hard knee, you'll still find it's a little bit more gradual compared to one of the other compressor models that'll have that has a knee function as well. It stops some of that pumping and allows to get more subtle control over the compression, even at higher ratios and higher compression values. The last control that we have is effectively the mix. Now, there's a term for parallel compression, where you have your dry signal playing through in parallel to the compressed signal, and then the engineer will blend the two together. Now, what Line 6 have done is through a mix control, they're going to allow you to mix in the dry signal and the compression signal to give you a bit more, if you like, you can get a bit more of your punch off your bass, and then the compression comes in at the same time. So it gives you a bit more real feel with compression. Now, as I said, most of the compressors on the market today that you pick up, or the models of the compressors in the Helix, all have those controls, but some of them are hidden. Before I went into the Helix world, I was using this MXR M87 bass compressor. It's got the input on the Rochester, that's the gain. It's got the output or the level. I've got a ratio that goes from 4:1 up to 20:1, and it's got attack and release. This is really good, but it's got a fixed knee, which is defined, and I can't change it. So I have no effect over that. Let's go and have a look at some of the settings within HX Edit, and we'll play along and we'll see if you can hear the difference in my playing. We'll see how you go. Okay, so what I've got here is the Rochester comp. I've put it at the beginning of the path, and it's in front of the amp and the cab. Now, I haven't got the amp and cab turned on because I just want to go through the compressor, but this is how I would normally have it. There is an option to put it towards the end, but I find that's more of a studio type glue subtle compressor. Whereas with the Rochester, what I'm looking for is that normalization of my dynamic range before I then go and affect it with tone controls and effects, etc. You can see the controls we talked about before, so gain, threshold, ratio, attack, release, etc. I've got the gain and the level set at 0. So my starting point is to set those for 0 and then adjust the threshold, ratio and attack to get the sound that I'm looking for, and then I'll fine tune it with gain, and then I'll go through and do the unity leveling at the end with the level control. That's the way I do it, and that usually works out okay for me. So as a starting point, this is pretty good. If I turn that off, I'm just going to record myself in the looper. See how that goes? So you can see there's a bunch of spikes there. The volume's okay, but it's, you know, quite loud and spiky. Some softer notes and some louder notes. Now if I turn the compressor on at that starting level, let's let that finish. So you can see it's crushed it quite a lot, right? The spikes are still there, but they're not as dramatic and popping right out of that level. So that's a fairly nice level of compression. Fairly subtle. You're not really going to notice too much about it, but it's just going to keep that consistent sound, right? So, you know, just tightens it up a little bit. Now, at minus 30 dB, that means that anything that I'm playing that's going to be below minus 30 won't get compressed at all, and anything above that will be compressed, and the louder it is, the more it will become compressed. Hence, you're seeing that nice tight band, but it's quite low, and the spikes are still popping out a bit. Now, what I can do is, if I'm going to play around with the threshold, and I'm going to play around with the gain. So I'm going to reduce the threshold to minus 24, and that will mean that less will become compressed. But as I then improve the gain or increase the gain, you'll find that what was at minus 20 is now at minus 25 if I set the gain to 25. So it'll start to become compressed again. So let's just play that through and see if you get the gist of it. So I've dropped the compression to minus 24 halfway through, and you can see it expanded in volume a bit because I'm not compressing as much, so I'm not overly dropping the volume. Now if I play around with the gain, so about 2.5, I'm increasing the volume again. But my spikes are still not above that minus 12 one will be. Now if I increase the compression to make it more tight, I'll go to 8:1. See, it's dropped that volume again. The compression's kicked in a lot harder this time. I haven't changed the threshold, but now the higher notes and the lower notes are a lot more closer together in volume. So I'm going to leave that at 8:1. And to get the volume back up, I'm now going to adjust the level, the output volume. And what I'm targeting is I'm trying to target to see if I can peak at minus 6. Playing through again. So I've got 5.5 dB or nearly 6 dB of makeup gain, and you can see in the playthrough, I've increased the volume of the output. And you see, going in and out between the compressor being on and off, the volume is now about the same, but you can see I've dramatically reduced those peaks. with the compressor on. With the compressor off. Now you can play around with that again as you like. So the main, what you're trying to do is looking at how much compression you want to put in. Now I'm doing a lot of pops there, so the compressors, I want more compression on that top end. But if I'm just playing normal driving rock, 4:1 might be sufficient for me. Minus 30 to minus 24 is a great starting point. And again, you may decide that you want less things being compressed and just the louder notes. So you might drop that to minus 15, minus 10 to get only the top edges compressed. Keep some dynamic range in place. Or you may decide to leave it there and then adjust the gain. You might turn the gain down so it's not hitting as much through the front end, or increasing it like I've done here. And then your makeup gain or your level will be adjusted. Now I had that knee at 0, so that was a very hard knee. So let's try that again. Same settings I've got now, but I'm going to put the knee on around 6, which is where I like to have it. So it's not soft, but it's also not hard. Let's see what effect that has. So the compressor's kicking in, and then but as it kicks in, it's gradually increasing in its compression as opposed to in hard. So again, playing around with that knee will give you some more subtlety in that. So if you're just looking to clean up nice compression, you might be playing jazz and you want some notes that ring out a little bit, you know, a longer release with a soft knee will give you that, and a sort of a 2 to 3 to 1 compression will give you that. Now the last thing I want to look at is this mix level. So I'm going to drop the level and the gain back to 0 and play around with that mix, because what's going to happen is as I include more dry signal, that louder dry signal is going to make the whole volume go up. So that'll blow my things again. So let's start playing it through and I'll adjust the mix. So let's put through at 100%. As I drop it down to 50, so I'm still compressing those peaks, but you can see how there's some of them a little escaping. So the drive is still there from my dry signal, that punch that I was getting originally, but I'm also getting a little bit of it tamed off a little bit. Now I can play around with that mix and get that how I feel. I might want to drop down more of the natural sound or more of the compressed sound. Again, play this to your taste and see how you go. I really like the tight compression, the tightness that tightness the compression gives me when I'm playing. So I like it more at the 80 to 100% mark. But again, you might really like that cleaner, drier signal coming through with a bit of compression over the top just to tame some of the peaks in there. Again, the value of having the Rochester over some of the other compressors is the flexibility you get to have it. You can dial this in wherever you like. In the guide that I'm putting down below from the link, I'm going to put some examples of some starting compression settings for a number of genres. So again, check that out as starting points. They won't be the be end and all. Use that to start with and then adjust those settings to see how it goes with your ear. It's all about your ear. If you can hear it and it sounds good, then it is good. If you can't hear it, put some earplugs in. So after years of playing with bass, in my opinion, a compressor is a must-have, always-on effect on my pedal board. And when I moved across from a physical pedal board with pedals and the MXR M87, then I was looking for a compressor on the Helix. And the one that suits me the best and I find has the most flexible controls is that Rochester comp. Having all the controls of a compressor being made available means it's as flexible as it needs to be so that I can dial the compressor in to suit the style of music or the style of playing that I have at the time. So if I want a different feel for my rock sound compared to my really appalling funk playing, then I can do that by changing the various aspects of the compressor. Some of the other compressors that are on the Helix don't allow you as much flexibility and are really designed after some of the guitar ones, which are either designed mainly to give some sustain or for lead soloing type work. Now, doesn't mean they won't work for the bass, but the Rochester comp just seems to be much more flexible and bass friendly, if you like. The two important controls on the Rochester are the gain or the input volume, input gain, and the threshold. Remember, setting the threshold sets the level at which the compressor is going to kick in, and the gain allows you to then adjust that, and you can adjust the threshold up and the gain up, or the threshold down and leave the gain where it is, to get the sound that suits you for the amount of compression you need to put in for what you're listening for. Remember, attack and release allow you to determine when the compression is actually going to turn on and how long it's going to be on for. And the ratio sets the amount of compression that's going to be applied when you hit that threshold. Don't be afraid to play around with the mix setting. That parallel compression can give you a really cool sound if that's what you're looking for. I personally don't use it. I like the compressed sound, but play around with it. It can be a really good outcome. And again, it's something that the Rochester has that a number of the other models within Helix don't allow you to have. We've talked about compression and how that works, and specifically the Rochester comp, but to see where it fits in the signal path before the amp or after the amp, check out this video. Catch you later.